Julius Caesar, Act 1, Scene 2 is what we are going to begin, and we will do this particular scene in 4 parts because it's a longish scene and there are certain parts that need a lot of detailed explanation, which is precisely what we do here on SWS to ensure that the line by line explanation is truly a line by line explanation. You get a very clear idea about what each character is saying. Okay, तो करना है तो बिल्कुल पटाखे की तरह करना है. Okay, so this particular scene is taking place at a public place. Flourish, which means the sound of trumpets. Julius Caesar enters, apna hero. Now he has entered. Now you see the interesting part is that Act 1, Scene 1. I really like that scene because it kind of sets the tone for what is to follow in Scene 2. We are not introduced to Caesar, but Caesar ki baatein hoti hain. There's a lot of talk about Julius Caesar, the element of political insecurity and jealousy that I spoke about in the first video in detail. Okay, so here we will kind of get the reasons and the whole thing will get fleshed out much more in Act 1, Scene 2. You will get much more idea about why Marullus and Flavius spoke the way they did in Act 1, Scene 1. Okay, so ek tarah se you are going to get to connect the dots. Julius Caesar in that sense is a major political discourse and it gives you an idea, and actually many of the elements, while I was preparing the notes, I realized that many of the elements that are spoken about in Julius Caesar are actually relevant even to the politics of today, be it in India or anywhere in the world. Okay, there is Mark Antony, who is Julius Caesar's close friend, Calpurnia, who is the wife of Julius Caesar, Portia, who is the wife of Brutus, Cicero, this is Decius Brutus, Brutus, Cassius. I mean, these are all senators of Rome. Okay, so Casca and a great crowd following. Among them is soothsayer. Soothsayer is someone who makes prediction, who is able to tell about the future. Okay, so Caesar calls out to his wife and Casca says, "Peace ho." Caesar speaks. Caesar again calls out to Calpurnia and Calpurnia says, "I am here, my lord." And Caesar says, "I want you to stand directly," because you see it is that festival which is going on, which is to celebrate purity and fertility in the month of February in Rome. So that is what is essentially taking place, and they are all, Antony in particular is dressed in the attire for a traditional foot race which is part of this particular festival. Okay, the Lupercalia race. Now Caesar asks Calpurnia to stand directly in Antony's way. Now Antony and Antonius both are used by Shakespeare alternately, so don't get confused, they mean the same person. Okay, don't get confused ki ye alag alag to nahi hai. No, Antony and Antonius mean the same person. Shakespeare himself has used it differently. Okay, when he does run his course, when he's running that particular race, and then he calls out to Antony. So basically, why is he telling this to Calpurnia? Calpurnia did not have, Caesar and Calpurnia did not have any children. As our elders say, okay, we'll come to, okay, to touch, he's telling Antony to touch Calpurnia because, as our elders say, the infertile woman, the barren woman who does not have any children, I find this extremely sexist way of putting it. Okay, I don't like it. The infertile woman, when the infertile woman is touched during this particular holy race, chase meaning a holy race. Let me keep marking it for that. Aapko aasani hogi samajhne mein aap. You can look at the notes, or in any case, keep making notes in your on the side of the book. That's always the best way. Shake off their sterile curse. That is, shake off the curse of sterility, of not bearing children. So he believes that since Antony is going to be taking part in that race, and while he's running, if he touches Calpurnia, the two touch each other. I mean, he touches Calpurnia, that will actually transform some of that positive energy. This is a superstition that it will transform some of the positive energy to Calpurnia, and that will shake off her curse of sterility. He believed that it was a curse. So it kind of gives you an idea into the kind of personality that Julius Caesar is. थोड़ा अंधविश्वासी है. He's a bit superstitious. He believes in these kind of things which are not really confirmed by any kind of scientific backing. Antony says, I will remember. When Caesar says do this, it is performed. He says when Caesar says something needs to be done, it will be done, it is done. This line again tells you two different things. एक तो about Caesar's personality, when Caesar says something needs to be done, it has to be done in Rome. Okay, so it kind of makes him at an exalted stature that he is of that particular status. दूसरी बात, ये दोस्ती बनी रहे because Antony and Caesar are very close friends. Okay, so in the theme of friendship, these kind of lines are useful because when Caesar says something, Antony will ensure that it will be done, be it a small thing or be it something more significant. And this is something which will play out much more after Caesar's assassination in the latter half of the play. So please remember this particular line. This is significant. Okay. भूलने का नहीं. Set on and leave no ceremony out. So he says that, just go on and do not forget to leave out any ritual. Now, let me tell you some background. Interesting कहानी सुनाने में बहुत मजा आता है. And Caesar का it's very interesting because all this actually happened in history. And Shakespeare has taken out all that material. Shakespeare has taken all that material and used his own dramatic ingenuity to kind of make it into a politically relevant kind of a play. Now, Caesar believes in these superstitions which are associated with the Lupercal festival and this particular race that is conducted during this particular festival in the month of February, which is associated with the theme of purity in Rome. Okay, now it was celebrated as the Roman festive month of purification. Now, Caesar hoped that this would result in an heir, that is, he would get a child as a result of this. So it showed that he was concerned about his succession. This is one aspect that you need to bear in mind. The second thing is that I'll tell you something more interesting. Now you will think that did Caesar not have any children? Well, he did have one legitimate biological child. I'm using the word legitimate because there are reports that he had one child which was not born out of wedlock. Okay, so one legitimate biological child who was a daughter, okay, from his first wife. Okay, Calpurnia was his third wife. Okay, so and she was the wife when he was assassinated. So just remember this. I mean, this is for your general knowledge also. So the Lupercal runners, what they would do is they would carry goat skin, okay, which they would stuck along the course, and it was supposed to make men virile and women fertile. Okay, that was the belief associated with this particular race. Okay, now you have understood. यहाँ तक की कहानी समझ में आ गई है, तो आगे बढ़ते हैं. Then there is a flourish of trumpets once again. And Soothsayer calls out to Caesar. Soothsayer is the old man who calls out to Caesar. Caesar, who calls? Because it's a large crowd. Flavius and Marullus in Act 1, Scene 1 tried to ensure that there was not much of a crowd which had gathered. They were clearly unsuccessful in their attempts. Okay. They could not do what they wanted to do. Casca says, bid every noise be still, peace yet again. He says, let everyone be quiet because we want to know who is calling out to Caesar. Right? So, yeah. So Caesar says, who is it in the press? That is in the crowd. Press means, who is it in the press? Arey, idhar aaja bhai. Okay. Who is it in the press who calls on me? That calls on me. Okay. This is important. Press essentially referring to the crowd. I hear a tongue shriller than all the music. There's a lot of music which is being played. Uske beech mein he is able to hear one noise calling out Caesar, his name. So he wants to know the identity of that person who is calling out his name. Okay. And he says, cry Caesar, speak Caesar is turned to hear. That I am here, attention. Batao bhai, who is speaking, who is calling out my name? Soothsayer says, beware the Ides of March. Okay, Ides of March. Okay, which means essentially talking about the 15th of March. March 15 को कुछ होने वाला है, please beware. Beware means he's giving a warning. What man is that, right? So he's saying, who is saying that? A soothsayer bids you beware the Ides of March. So he's saying, I am a soothsayer. I am someone who can predict the future, and I am telling you to beware of what could happen on the 15th day of March. Okay, this is happening when? This is happening in February. So he's talking about a prediction in just less than 4 weeks time. Okay, Caesar says, set him before me, let me see his face. Cassius says, fellow, come from the throng, look upon Caesar. So he says, step out of the crowd. Throng here means crowd again. So he says, पहले कौन सा word था जो press. Okay, so press and throng both mean crowd. Look upon Caesar, face Caesar, and Caesar says, what says thou to me? Now speak once again. Soothsayer says, beware the Ides of March. Caesar says, he's a dreamer, let us leave him pass. Now, so he says he's just a dreamer, so let's ignore him. So what does it show? He does not pay any attention to this particular prediction made by the soothsayer. Important. Okay, now soothsayer's prediction that comes true actually is a pointer towards what? Is a pointer towards fate, that something is certain to happen. We may dismiss it as superstition. In this case, it comes true. So obviously, he's endowed with some kind of an ability to predict the future or to warn about the future. Okay, when Caesar says he's a dreamer, he's basically saying that he's speaking nonsense. So Caesar, who otherwise is known to be superstitious, in this case does not believe so. And why he doesn't believe so? Perhaps it comes out of a sense of arrogance that nothing can happen to me. Who is he to say, warn me about a particular date? Nothing can happen to me. I am Julius Caesar, who has won so many battles, who is completely in control of this Roman Republic. Okay, and I want to be the ruler. So there is a sense of arrogance which kind of envelops Julius Caesar's mind while he is dismissing him as just a dreamer. So if you get a question about, explain why he says he's a dreamer, it comes basically out of Julius Caesar's own sense of self-importance and entitlement, that I am a ruler, what is there for me to be warned about? Okay, so he's dismissive of him, even though otherwise Caesar, as I said, is known to be superstitious, asking Antony to touch Calpurnia because he wants her to be bearing children for him. Okay, now while he lends the soothsayer an ear, it's not as though he's impolite. He makes it a point that the person who is calling out to him is brought forward and he's able to come face to face with that old soothsayer and hear what he has to say. So he's not a rude kind of a ruler in that sense. He's a polite person who knows the basic courtesies of governance. Okay, but at the same time, the second point, one is a sense of arrogance which seems to be there. That's one way of interpreting it. The other thing is that he does not think he's vulnerable to any kind of harm. उसको नहीं लगता है, सीजर को ये नहीं लगता है कि मेरा कोई कुछ बिगाड़ लेगा. ओके ना, वो कुछ लोग होते हैं ना, मेरा तो कोई कुछ नहीं बिगाड़ सकता, मैं तो दुनिया की ऐसी तैसी कर दूंगा. Julius Caesar suffers from that kind of an arrogance and the fact that he does not think he is vulnerable. Why? Because he's just returned from a war. He has just defeated Pompey's sons. One of them was killed. He's just defeated Pompey's sons. So in that sense, his biggest enemy who was there within the Roman Republic, Pompey was defeated in 48 BC, and now Pompey's sons have been defeated. So in that sense, he thinks himself as invincible. And here is a person who is asking me to beware of a particular day in the month of March. So this whole thing is an important element in the role of fate in this particular play by William Shakespeare. Okay, so we will pause here as far as this first part is concerned, because this kind of sets the tone. The second part is very long. It's a long kind of a dialogue between Brutus and Cassius, and he tries to convince him that Caesar is not someone who is very desirable for Rome, actually more for themselves, because they're all feeling threatened by the rise of Julius Caesar. That we will read and understand in part 2 of Act 1, Scene 2, the part 2 explanation video. So I hope you have understood this, the basic setting of the play, because the basic setting of the play is as a result of this prediction which has been made by this soothsayer. Okay, so now I will see you in Act 1, Scene 2 explanation video number 2. As I said, we'll be doing this in 4 parts. Okay, tata, bye bye, be good, पढ़ते मत रहना, but कभी कभी बुक्स भी देख लेना. Okay, bye bye.